welcome to this week's episode of Bridge to Faith. I'm your host, Yusuf Estes, and for the next few minutes, we're going to be talking about faith, what it is, how you can get it, and how it applies to today's world. And then following that, we'll have somebody's particular story of their bridge to faith. All of that and more is coming up right here.
We got a special topic to talk about today. The topic of a book called The Eighth Scroll. It's a fascinating book, something that had an impact on me personally, and I want to talk to you about that. I'm Yusuf Estes, and the name of the program is The Eighth Scroll. We're going to be talking about this book with the author, who is with us now, Dr. Lawrence B. Brown. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Okay, now you're a Muslim. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah.
And I'm a Muslim.
Yeah.
And you've written a book called The Eighth Scroll. This book deals with the subject of...
Well, many things, but basically it launches the reader from the Dead Sea Scrolls into modern controversies about...
So we're going to be talking about a scroll as in a religious scroll from a couple thousand years or so ago.
Yep, basically.
And this is number 8.
Well, yeah. I mean, basically, when the Dead Sea Scrolls were first discovered, they discovered 7 intact scrolls.
This is true.
And so the premise of this book is about the 8th scroll.
Another scroll that was...
Another scroll that was discovered, but the content was found to be too theologically volatile. The person who discovered it did not want it coming out.
Now, hold on a second. This is true facts, or is it fiction?
Well, it's fiction.
Oh, okay.
But it's grounded in reality.
Grounded in reality, but the story itself is fiction.
The story itself is fiction, of course, but you see, the point is that when the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, they created a great deal of excitement.
Yes, they did.
Why? The reason why is because they were all Old Testament scrolls, but the fact that such a large number of ancient scrolls were discovered, and the fact that they dated to 30 years after the time of the mission of Jesus Christ, it gave a window period of 30 years there, and people were hoping that somewhere in the network of caves in that area, they would find not just the Dead Sea Scrolls, but the Gospel of Jesus.
Ah, so now this is reality we're talking about.
This is reality, and yeah. This is why the whole world turned their attention to that area, and this is why, in particular, the church, the Jewish interests, and so on, focused upon that area because they all knew that if it's a valid gospel of one of the disciples of Jesus, or if the gospel of Jesus himself were discovered, it could reset the religions of the world.
This subject it sounds like something really intense here when we're talking about the reality behind the story, referring to the scrolls. Now you're telling us that these scrolls that were discovered, called the Dead Sea Scrolls, are actually Wadi Qumran, the Valley of Qumran, where they found these in the caves there. Now, they first told us these scrolls were safely back before, predating Christianity. That was one of the big things they wanted to insist. By the way, the scrolls were kept from the public for how many years?
Well, this is one of the huge scandals.
Yeah.
The scrolls were discovered in 1947, and they were basically hidden from the public for about 60 years. It's only this year that the record has come out on the internet, and until just very recently, last few years, the content of the scrolls has been very, very carefully guarded. That was part of the scandal. This has been an academic scandal from the beginning because there has been libraries, libraries of ancient documents from periods before this, which were completely translated and completely made public much faster than what happened with the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Dead Sea Scrolls were sequestered, they were hidden away from the public eye, And the public was only given little snippets as the controllers of the scrolls wanted it released.
So these books that came out in the 1980s and 90s, all about the Dead Sea Scrolls, weren't really that complete then.
They weren't that complete, but some of them were very helpful because they started to add to our information.
Who was the first responsible religious entity involved in this?
Boy. I mean, I would, you have to excuse me, but I would just have to say that up until this time, there hasn't been a responsible entity.
Okay, let's say those who claimed authority over.
Well, look.
Let's do that.
In the very beginning, the original Dead Sea Scrolls team was a team of 8 scholars headed up by Roland Deveau, who was a Catholic priest.
From where?
And from the École Bibliothèque. But he was, by all rights, I mean, by the description of the other people working with him, he was incredibly biased. If anything was found in the scrolls that went against his theology, he didn't want to know about it. And this is what the other scroll
sounds like
team
some
members,
people I know in religion today.
Yeah, well, religion has become more like a theological turf war than a search for truth, and this is what has happened with the Dead Sea Scrolls. So originally he was in charge of the team. Now, the 6-Day War came along, where Israel expanded their borders to the Jordan River, and expanded their borders to the Dead Sea, and in expanding their borders, they took over the area of Qumran, the caves, the museum with the Dead Sea Scrolls, and all the Dead Sea Scrolls, claimed them as their property. Then Israel took command of the scrolls. So, here you have the scrolls originally under the control of the Roman Catholic Church, transitioning to being under control of Israel. And these are the two entities that were most threatened by these scrolls. Why? Because the real life scenario is that they are scared to death that a true scroll will come out with true New Testament material showing exactly what Jesus Christ taught. Why is that a threat? Number one, if Jesus Christ was validated as a real prophet, that would destroy Judaism, and Israel would fall by the wayside. It would lose its foundation as a country. Okay? Number two, if the teachings of Jesus are the same as his teachings in the Bible, then that would destroy Trinitarian Christianity. Because if you read the Bible and look only at the teachings of Jesus, not at anything else, that is Unitarian Christianity. Jesus never taught the Trinity. He never taught that he was the Son of God. He never taught that he was an intercessor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if you look just at what Jesus Christ taught, and if that came out in a real gospel, that would destroy Trinitarian Christianity.
Okay. But so, what if it turned out that he is preaching this Trinitarian gospel? Then that would pretty much wipe out the Unitarians. So that's, like you said, it's a turf war.
But the Unitarians weren't strong enough to exert an influence. The Roman Catholic Church and Israel were, and other entities, of course,
But it looks like a lot of people could be affected.
Of course. I mean,
or be out of work.
Yeah. I mean, all 4 of the Gospels in the Bible, are anonymous. Now we know that from Christian scholars. They're attributed to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. None of them are signed. None of them have the words in them, the Gospel according to. None of them are attributed to the authors who we now have the name upon them in the original manuscript. That was something added 200 years later.
Originally, they were labeled with letters, just like Q. Well, a lot of the Gospels refer back to parts of Q, something that they don't have anymore, but they know it existed at one time. than to give this personal touch or feeling. We want to have an author by name, and they came out with the idea of, as you said, let's put a name on here and give it a personal touch.
It gave it the impression of authenticity, but you have Christian scholars now coming forth and admitting that all four of the Gospels were anonymous, admitting that they have been altered, admitting that there is so much disparity between the manuscripts that we cannot have an accurate picture of what really happened during that historical period. And the point is that there's a great deal of uncertainty, and as you said, people have leveraged their jobs, their lives upon a particular belief system. But who truly knows, among Christians, who truly knows what the teachings of Jesus were? When you have anonymous authors, Gospels that were written, anywhere up to over 100 years after the time of the mission of Jesus Christ, Gospels that don't agree with one another on many different of the particulars.
Major issues.
Yeah. Then how can you know with certainty what happened during that period of history? But what we do know is the Old Testament that was represented in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Okay, the Old Testament was covered by the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Dead Sea Scrolls cover everything except for the book of Esther. Okay?
The book of Esther.
That's the only thing that was not represented in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Okay.
But the Dead Sea Scrolls were kept by the Essenes. The Essenes were one of the groups of groups of Judaism at that time. There were the Sadducees and the Pharisees and the Essenes, and then there were some small splinter extremist groups like the Zealots.
The Zealots.
Yeah, and but the Essenes were the third major group. They were the keepers of the scrolls.
Mm-hmm.
But they lived in this this compound, in the Qumran complex, until 68 CE, which is when they were wiped out. Now, 68 CE is roughly 30 years after
Tell our audience
the
what
mission
CE
of Jesus.
means.
Oh, well, CE means Christian era or Common Era. Okay, we have always, or we were raised to speak in terms of AD and
which is Latin
and
for
BC, Anno Domino. Okay, which means the year of our Lord. And the point is that terminology has changed to CE because not everybody believes in Jesus Christ having been Lord. So to accommodate all faiths, we now speak in terms of CE. Okay, so but the point is that the Essenes, the keeper of the scrolls, they were wiped out in 68, and that was about 30 years after the end of Jesus' mission. So that left a window period of 30 years where they could have come into the possession of a gospel that told the truth of Jesus.
You said they were wiped out.
Yeah.
Was this due to a plague or the Roman army, or?
It's a fascinating period. In 66 CE, the Jews revolted against the Romans. The Romans had been oppressing them, occupying them, taxing them. Nero was the emperor of Rome at that time. Everybody knows what a horror he was. He basically started a campaign of persecution against the Christians. Started, of course, with burning down the Christian slums in Rome itself. Then when he went to rebuild, he needed a whole lot of money. Started looking for it from anywhere in the kingdom. When he couldn't get enough, he started trying to take it from the treasury of the Temple of Jerusalem.
Oh.
That was the final straw. When he reached out to try to take the treasures of the Temple of Jerusalem, the Jews revolted. It started the Jewish Revolution, which lasted from 66 to 70 CE. In the middle of that period, in 68 is when the Essenes were wiped out. Basically, it's a colorful history. Nero sent Vespasian, a big Roman emperor. He started at the north and just started moving south through this area. And he demanded submission or death, and any community that did not submit, he murdered all of the men, raped all the women, put all the children into slavery. He would raze the village, just burn it to the ground, even to the point of cutting down all of their trees and filling the fields with salt, so that nobody could even come back and plow that land anymore. And he continued this reign of terror all the way down to Jerusalem. Along the way, he took out the Essenes and eventually took over Jerusalem. And that itself is a fascinating story, how Jerusalem fell.
Okay, I want to just touch on something. You mentioned about burning the Christian slums. Is this any reference to when they talk about Rome burned? Well,
sure.
Nero was fiddling, or...
Sure, although the fiddle had not yet been invented.
Yeah.
So Rome actually was playing on his lyre. You know, this...
Nero.
This, what did I say? Did I say Rome?
Yeah.
Okay, well, Nero was
playing
Rome
his lyre.
The emperor was Rome. Nero was playing his lyre on Cornell Hill while Rome burned. The thing is that it was made to be the burning of Rome was a mystery. Nobody knows exactly who started the fire. Different theories have been put forth, but the most reasonable theory is that Nero himself coordinated the fire and then blamed it upon the Christians. Used that as justification to then persecute the Christians.
So he burns them up, then blames them for it,
Yeah.
labels them as terrorists. Oh, I'm sorry, I went to the wrong time period. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds familiar, doesn't it?
I don't know.
But no, exactly. I mean, he started this. Now, of course, it didn't burn just the Christian slums. It burned a lot of people out of their homes.
Okay, so now let's come back to the book. We're talking about the eighth scroll, and in this book you said it's fiction, yet it refers to some of the things that have been known to be true from the scrolls that they found, the factual information you've been sharing with us. Let's talk now about the book and how the book has some way ties this together, the fiction you have here and the true story.
Well, basically the premise is that there was an eighth scroll, which, as I said, somebody found and hid it away because they found the content too theologically challenging. And the reason why this is real life is we have to remember that the Dead Sea Scrolls was not just one find. Originally there were 11 caves found. A couple have been added since then.
11 caves?
Yeah, to this day they're still searching the area, to this day. They're still searching to see if they find any more finds. 11 caves. The total number of manuscripts represented in the Dead Sea Scrolls find was over 600.
Now,
over 600.
You're saying 600. Now, is this 600 full manuscripts,
No.
partial manuscripts, pieces, or what are we talking about?
No, there actually are 8 full manuscripts, 7 in the original find. And about 10 years later, they found the temple scroll in Cave 11. But they found, as complete scrolls, they found these 8 scrolls, and they found a 9th scroll, which is called the Copper Scroll, which was basically a treasure map.
A list.
A treasure list, yeah.
Yeah.
And
that one I saw how they cut it up with the
in
like
strips.
chiseled it and then took those strips and laid them out, and
Yeah.
they first thought it was something they didn't even know what it was when they looked at it. They thought it was a piece of metal rod or something.
Made out of copper. What is this strange thing? But that's not really considered a scroll. It's spoken of as the Copper Scroll, but it's not classified in the same category.
It's nothing about religion. It's just about where all the goodies are.
Just a treasure list.
Okay.
Right? But in addition, they found fragments of the scrolls, fragments of up to around 600 scrolls. But they were so destroyed that they only found fragments. Some of these fragments were page size. Some of these fragments were as small as a letter. Some of these fragments were as small as just part of a letter. So
you wouldn't have any real use for it.
yeah, they don't give an intelligible meaning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some of the characters in your book, what are their names? Michael, I found Michael to be in here.
Right?
Michael
Michael
like
and
the
Gerald
principal
Hansen.
in Gerald.
Yeah.
Principal characters.
The father and son archaeological team.
Okay.
Right? They're the ones who start out on the path of looking for this 8th scroll.
Now, are they totally fictional? There's not anybody named Hansen or...
No. No, totally fictional.
Okay.
And then Frank Tones and his daughter Rachel.
Again, totally fictional?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, not based on any person or...
Oh, no, that can't do that. Might end up in court. But no, these are all fictional characters.
Teachers of righteousness.
The teacher of righteousness, yes.
Yeah, what is
the teachers?
By the way, I've heard of this even in Josephus.
Uh-huh.
So, have you read much about Josephus and his...
And his Antiquities?
Antiquities, yeah.
Well, the whole question is, was there one teacher of righteousness or were there many?
Ah, okay.
No, it's a very important point. Was there one prophet or were there many? There have been many prophets in the chain of revelation.
Many teachers.
And so was there one teacher of righteousness or were there many teachers of righteousness? In a chain, a continuity of teachers of righteousness. And many scholars, many of the Dead Sea scholars have proposed that the teacher of righteousness spoken about in the Dead Sea Scrolls was in fact either Jesus Christ or James or perhaps could be one of the other disciples.
Gamaliel.
But I'm sorry?
Gamaliel.
Gamaliel? That's a new one on me.
Gamaliel, that's Egyptian Arabic, or Jamil.
Oh, okay.
This was 2,000 years. They claim that may be some have offered the opinion that he was, in fact, a teacher of Jesus. Hayam Maccabee. You know, Hayam Maccabee wrote The Myth of the God Incarnate.
Uh-huh.
This was maybe popular 15 years ago or so. And he had written from his religious point of view, and it was, he had fictional stuff, but he had, in his particular work that I'm talking about, it wasn't fiction. He was talking seriously about some of the problems that associated with the way people understood scrolls that they had found.
Uh-huh.
So now, in your book, does it make it clear that everything you're saying is just a nice story, or are we supposed to think that this is some hidden agenda or implication here?
Well, no, you have to understand it's an action adventure.
Action adventure.
It's murder, mystery, intrigue. It's all of this, but at its core, what you read in there about the religious controversies, what you read in there about what's happening in Palestine or Israel, these are real things. What you read about the Dead Sea Scrolls, this is real life scenario. This is what is going on in the Dead Sea Scrolls controversy right now.
We're looking at a close up now of the book cover, and we're seeing looks like red dots on it. That's supposed to be blood.
Oh yeah.
So this is a bloody story as well.
Well, it has its share of murder and mystery, intrigue.
When I started out the program, I mentioned that it had an impact on me, and I would like to share with our audience something that if you don't know me, you don't realize that I never read fiction books. I'm not really interested in fiction because I'm very interested to know the truth. I don't need to know more lies. So when somebody offers me to read a fictional book, I usually give them the idea that, okay, whenever I don't have anything else to do. But in the case you gave me the manuscript before it was ever published, I remember that I had it packed away in my briefcase, and when I got on an airplane to fly across the Atlantic, I had been upgraded to the first class, and I was really enjoying rocking back there. And I said, no, just let me go to sleep now. What can I read that'll just, I've got that fictional book from that Dr. Brown. I get it out, and this is loose leaf, the way you gave it to me.
Yeah.
I laid it there on between the seats, the little panel there, and started reading. I said, I'll just knock out a couple pages. And I wasn't able to stop reading until we hit the ground. When we hit the ground, I had just completed it.
So you read the whole book in one go?
Oh, yeah, I'll read fast. But I was so taken. As I would read, I would think, oh my gosh, I can't wait for the next page.
Now, was that daytime or nighttime? Did you lose any
sleep? It was nighttime. I usually sleep at night in the airplanes. That's how I travel all the time. So I thought this was going to be a great chance to really catch up on some Z's. But not so. I left the ground, and it was not night yet. And when I landed, it was full daytime. And here I'm still turning pages going, oh, I got to get to the end of this before I get off the plane. I've got to see how it ends. Fascinating work. Interesting book. The audience will be surprised to find that this is one of those that you really can't put it down till you get to the end. And whether or not it really is pointing to some hidden truths or great revelations, it's a great read.
Well, that's it for this week's episode of Bridge to Faith. Remember our website, bridgetofaith.com. Until next time, peace. Salam alaikum.